Hello again. In this episode, I'm going to go over Chapter 9, the expansion of civilization in Southern Asia. And many of you have already defined those terms, so if you are looking for answers to try to answer those 5 questions that I posted in the forum, and they're also in this block for this particular week, this will help you to be able to do that. Some of the chief destinations are what is today Afghanistan, northern India, and all of that area in Arabia, all the way over to Rome would be different stopping points for these caravans. And you can see the different products that were traded back and forth between China and Rome, the two major empires in this particular time period that we're just coming out of. It was a conduit for materials and ideas as well, because that is how Buddhism eventually will expand to different areas. Kanishka was one of the greatest Kushan monarchs, and he began patronizing Buddhist monks, and they built all kinds of stupas and other very elaborate places of meditation. And there's an example of one in Tanagar, India. And from the Kushan kingdom, Buddhism eventually makes its way into China. Merchants and missionaries would stop, and they would erect statues, and they would decorate mountain caves with frescoes depicting the life of Buddha. And that Bamiyan Buddha statue was destroyed by the Taliban, unfortunately, not too long ago. After the decline of the Mauryan Empire, Chandragupta, another Chandragupta, this is no relation to the one we talked about previously, established a new dynasty. The Guptas were, generally speaking, this is considered to be by historians to be a time of great prosperity and thriving commerce. But much of it is controlled by government, which always leads to corruption. They control the mines and the lands, and eventually the nomadic warriors will destroy much of the power of this dynasty. Why does Buddhism decline? An interesting question after Siddhartha Gautama goes away. It's split into 2 schools that we've talked about, the Theravada and Mahayana schools, and they will continue into this time period. Followers of Theravada consider this a way of life, not a salvationist creed. And the Mahayana followers believe that those who are Theravada, they're following a lesser vehicle. They think that the teachings are too strict, that it favors the wealthy. And people who follow Buddhism want to believe that they can reach nirvana, and that's where a bodhisattva can come in, one who possesses the essence of Buddhahood. And these individuals, these bodhisattvas, will help those to achieve nirvana. And some of these bodhisattvas actually had some temples erected in their behalf. This is a famous statue of a female figure, a Lord of Compassion, Goddess of Mercy. So to the Mahayanas, Buddhism is more of a religion and not a philosophy. And that is where it was popular. Eventually, another reason for the decline is the reform of Hinduism. Brahmanism becomes Hinduism, and we discussed that before. Denying the existence of a soul ran counter to traditional Indian beliefs. It has a real strong attraction for those who want to escape the caste system. But this was a threat to the upper classes, so they reformed and placed more of an emphasis on bhakti, on ritual acts, which again makes it more of a religion rather than a philosophy. And because you observe these acts, you are creating good karma about yourself. And when you have good karma, you can be reincarnated then into a higher class in the next life. So this devotionalism within Hinduism helps to counter the popularity of Buddhism. And those Hindu missionaries will spread throughout southern Asia, and they will build their own temples as well. Islam first reaches India in the 1000s and in the 1100s, and the Turkic-speaking converts will have a more lasting effect than some of those earlier conquerors. We talked about this in the last chapter. Mahmud of Ghazni created a strong empire in what is today Afghanistan. And then his son took over and extended that empire throughout the upper Indus River Valley and as far south as the Indian Ocean. And he is a tyrant. And this is some of the beginning of the hatred between Hindus and Muslims. The Rajputs will rebel against Mahmud and his successors. They attempted to fight Muslims on elephant back, but they were no match for the cavalry of the Muslims. And by 1200, the Delhi Sultanate was established in northern India, and the Muslim influence there will last, not so much below the Ganges. The Tuglugs will replace the Mongols, and they are a very, very nasty group who will prey on the British in later years. Tamerlane or Tamur, the Sword of Islam, one of the last of the great nomadic warriors, and he was a devout Muslim. And those were some of the areas that he conquered. Caspian, Baghdad, and what is today Iraq. He raided into Anatolia, which is Turkey today. He went all the way to the Bosphorus before withdrawing. And he dies in battle in 1405. An excellent Islamic death. And there you see some of the other Mongol empires that were established. They conquered most of the known world. How did Islam change Indian society, and why did they convert? Again, because egalitarian nature of the Muslim faith. This appeals to those who are in the lower castes or are untouchables. They're tolerant rulers at the beginning, but over time, corruption sets in as wealth sets in. And many Hindu temples were razed and mosques were erected in their place. Eventually, they came to realize that not all Hindus could be converted, so they were required to pay a tax, and depending upon the nature of that tax, how high it is, or how prosperous the economy is and how much money people have to pay taxes, is whether or not that rule is tolerated. And millions did convert, especially amongst the Sudras. These are two huge religions of the world today, and they have striking differences. They're listed. Hindus are polytheistic. Muslims are monotheistic. Hinduism is hierarchical. Islam is egalitarian. Muslims will eat beef, and cows are sacred to Hindus. Hindu art is frankly sexual, and idolatry is pervasive, which offends Muslims. They did borrow things from each other. Eventually, the Rajas will learn to fight on horseback instead of elephants, and the Purdah were attracted to the Muslim tradition of hiding behind the curtain or hiding behind the veil and keeping women secluded. It's viewed as a practical means of protecting female virtue. However, that Muslim customs didn't have much effect on sati or widow burning. Muslim women have more rights than Hindu women. They're allowed to remarry, whereas Hindu women are supposed to end their lives as well on the funeral pyre of their husband. They're still considered to be foreign conquerors. The Mughal dynasty will attempt to reconcile the differences, and in the 1500s, the Guru Nanak will attempt to integrate the two faiths, and that is another religion of the subcontinent, Sikhism, which tends to attempt to blend both of these two religions. It is an alternative militant faith today. In most of India, Muslim rule does not disrupt the class and caste system. Most of the population lives off the land. The problem is the local ruler, the local king, retains ownership of all farmland in his domain. Again, corruption sets in. Farther north, you'll see more wheat and barley grown and vegetables. Cotton seems to have originated in the Indus River Valley, and it spread from there. And by the 700s and 800s, India is a big producer of cotton goods. Pepper and ginger are also primary exports. Within the subcontinent, war, piracy, and the heavy taxation of business community by the local rulers and the customs duties paid between principalities contributes to the decline in internal trade over time. But the Dravidian kingdoms in the south and along the northwest coast are always engaged in trade. Merchants live quite well. But outside of the entrepot communities or communities that trade with foreigners and outsiders from other countries, manufacturing and trade is not looked upon as being a very legitimate business. They're regarded as thieves without names. And this is reflected in what we talked about in China as well. For many centuries, merchants don't have a lot of status. And this may account for why commerce and growth did not expand as it did in Europe during the High Middle Ages. Government retains a monopoly on foreign trade, except in those entrepot areas. So, because of the monopoly controlled by government, you don't see the development of entrepreneurship. In science and technology, Aryabhata calculated the value of pi, and he measured the length of the solar year, very similar to findings in other places. Thanks to their invention, the Indian system of numbers spread into the Middle East, what we will call Arabic numerals, and eventually they replaced Roman numerals. The Ajanta Caves is a very famous rock architecture in the Deccan Plateau. They carved these caves out of solid rock. Also rock carvings in Mamallapuram. Traditional poetry was written in Sanskrit and in the languages of southern India. Kalidasa was a famous author. And these are some of the famous dramas. Shakuntala. Out of the Vedic hymns comes offbeat or raga. scales, which can be played using a sitar, and it's very similar to jazz and the great Ravi Shankar. Southeast Asia, it's all about the family, rice production, and politically they embraced monarchy. Heavy influence by India and China on Southeast Asia. The Viet were conquered slightly, but they never lost their identity as the Viet, even though they were controlled by the Chinese for 1,000 years. Angkor Thom was a very powerful state before 1500. This is the lost city, and the temple is within here. The Thai will conquer this place in the 15th century. Like the Thai, the Burmese converted to Buddhism, and they adopted Indian political institutions and cultures. Srivijaya and Majapahit were two huge trading societies, and those are the items that they traded with the Arabian Peninsula and India. The Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Commerce. We will talk about that more later in the semester. There is a Brahmin class in Angkor society. And the shadow play is a distinctive art form in Java and the other islands of the archipelago. Hierarchical societies. Women had very, very good standing in these societies. They were famous as bodyguards. Traditionally, it was animism, then Buddhism comes in, and eventually in the 12 and 1300s, the Malay Peninsula will embrace Islam. And Indonesia today is largely Islamic. And that's about it for chapter 9. One last thing on the Malayo-Polynesian speaking peoples. These are famous statues that have been found on Easter Island. This language group is all over the Pacific, Tahiti, Hawaii, New Zealand. And this is where Easter Island is located, not far from South America. There's ongoing archaeological digs on these statues today. Now we're done.